Ready to go? All right. I'm Sherri Cassel. I'm the park interpreter here at the old Las Vegas Mormon Fort, Nevada State Park. And right now you're in the museum, our visitor center. We have historic grounds. The oldest standing building in the entire state of Nevada is right here on this property. And I'd like to tell you a little about the timeline here at the old Las Vegas Mormon Fort. We always start with the Southern Paiute. Before we all came along, the Southern Paiute were here and are still here. We never talk about the indigenous people in the past. But they were here first. So when the Mormon pioneers landed here at this state park, which was just land then, they encountered the Paiute. In fact, the Mormons came here to proselytize the Paiute Indians. But they are nomadic people, and I think it's fascinating to talk about Southern Paiute because they lived on the land. And when I start tours here, and I always say, just imagine standing here and everything you need, your hardware store, your grocery store, your pharmacy, your Home Depot is right here on this land. And we walk around and talk about the plants here. For example, mesquite beans, that was a food source, or cattails that were in the water were a food source. The roots of the cattails are like potatoes, so that's a great food source. The bean pods, they would mash into a meal like a fine flour and either boil the beans or cook the flour. So that's their food source. And then they'd use arrowweed, which grows right along the creek. And they'd use that for their shelter, which is a wickiup or a con for above ground shelter. And what else were we? Some pharmacy. There's a cattail tree that the Southern Paiute use as medicinal. So everything the Southern Paiute needed was growing right here on this property. And all that was growing because the Las Vegas Creek went right through here. The Southern Paiute, as I said, still exists today at the Paiute colony a block away from here. And they've been around for millennia. So we always honor and regard them as friends and the stewards of this land originally.
Do the Paiute and the Mormons have an active hand in this fort still? Do they come by and Paiute, do they honor it, or the Mormons do something to?
Well, the Southern Paiute don't have much to do with the park anymore. We always welcome them. We used to have an indigenous peoples day here. So occasionally, yes, we do have them for events. They will come and do dancing here. We'd like to incorporate them more in maybe talks and presentations. As far as the Mormon Church, there's not much activity here, but we have a Friends of the Fort group and the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers. They play a crucial role in the wellness of this place. They are volunteer organizations. And for example, the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers played a key role in the preservation of the oldest building in Nevada. Had they not insisted that building be preserved through 170 years, we might not be standing in a park today. Once a month, those ladies come and clean the adobe building. The Friends of the Fort meet every month, and they are crucial in popular events here and fundraising for those events. So in that capacity, they do play a role. Whether they are Mormon or not is neither here nor there, but most of them are, and they play a crucial role in volunteering here.
At what point did Las Vegas or the people realize that this was such a historical site?
Well, the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers always thought it was a historical site, but it wasn't until the 1990s when this became a state park that it was actually recognized as a place to be preserved and honored for all time. And that's when it became a state park in 1991.
So up until that point, it was just ruins in the middle of the city.
Yeah, it was changing hands. I guess I should start how it got here. In 1855, Mormon missionaries came from Salt Lake City, sent by Brigham Young. And this was a trade route between Salt Lake City and San Bernardino, so they thought they should have a post here. And as I mentioned earlier, they wanted to convert the Southern Paiute and share their religion. So they decided this would be a good spot because of the water that ran through here. I know that seems not normal to be speaking about water in the Mojave Desert, but because we have the Las Vegas Creek going right through here, this was the optimal site to build a fort. So in 1855, they did that. And they met the Paiute. And the Paiute actually helped build the bricks, the adobe bricks that were needed to build this fort. So hand in hand, they worked together to build the fort in 1855.
Two questions that come to mind when you say that. Where did the water start and end in modern Las Vegas? And then what did they build the adobe bricks out with?
That's a great question, because the water starts and ends in modern Las Vegas the same way it did in 1855. It's rather fascinating. It starts at a place called Springs Preserve. Back in 1855, they titled that the Big Springs. And it's the headwaters of an aquifer that sits underground. And the water would just bubble up out of the springs, cascade down this giant bench or hill that we're on, through the Las Vegas Valley, go underground, and eventually make its way to the Colorado River through geology under the ground. So that is still the case today. Springs Preserve is still there. The big springs are still there. However, the aquifer that feeds the water is being regulated by the city of Las Vegas. Back in the day, everybody tapped into it with wells to the point it was being overused. It could not refill quickly enough to supplement the wells. So the city of Las Vegas, or the Las Vegas Valley Water District, decided we need to do something about that. So everybody stopped drilling, and we're going to regulate what happens with the aquifer. And to this day, that still happens. The aquifer is never allowed to bubble up out of the springs and cascade here anymore. We have a recreation of the Las Vegas Creek that used to go through here, because what would this site be without water? So it was important that we recreated the creek, even though it no longer flows through here.
And then what was the bricks made out of?
The bricks, that's a great question too. The bricks are adobe, so they're sand, mud, water, and if it was available, maybe grass or hay. Oftentimes they would use animal poop because it had grass or hay in it. But ours are primarily sand, mud, and water. And there's these beautiful forms that they created out of wood. There's one hanging back here on the ceiling. They would make this adobe consistency, about like peanut butter. And then they'd slap it in these forms that would lie in the ground, and they'd let it dry. It could dry in a week or 30 days, depending on the time of year. But don't forget, these Mormon missionaries came here in 1855 in June, and it was blazing hot. So it's likely they dried rather quickly. And they built those while they created the bricks on the ground. And then they would stack these bricks up to make a fort. Each wall was 150 feet long, and there were 4 of those. There were 2 tall wooden gates and 2 bastions, 2 towers on the corners. And we estimate that we think it took over 80,000 bricks to do. It took them 6 to 7 months to make the fort, but they did with the help of the Paiute. So they would make this peanut butter consistency mud and sand, let it dry, and then start stacking.
Were the bricks held together or were they just stacked?
They were just stacked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In fact, our recreation of the fort out there, you'll see, we recreated the fort the same way. They built adobe brick by brick, to recreate the fort and stack them. And we had a little secret ingredient in ours, though. In modern day, we added cement. Because if you didn't do that, because it's adobe, it would just disintegrate over time. So ours have a little cement to help them last a little longer. In fact, when we go into the adobe building, the original 1855 section that's still there, you'll see some of the original adobe bricks still in the wall. We've created a cutaway. Most of it's covered by stucco to protect those bricks so that they don't disintegrate. But we've put some cutaways so that you can actually see the original bricks.
So how long was the fort in use, and then why did the people leave?
So the Mormon missionaries came here in 1855, and within 6 to 7 months they finished the fort. And wouldn't you know it, by 1857 they were called back to Salt Lake City by Brigham Young. They were pretty successful at first. They had crops growing, they had a relationship with the Paiute, everything was pretty copacetic. And occasionally new missionaries would come and trade out, but the original group was 30 men that came here. And they, like I said, grew crops. They were proselytizing the Southern Paiute, had a relationship. But as time went on, things got more difficult. The weather was apart. The relationship with the Paiutes was disintegrating, and there was dissension among themselves too. They wanted to go mine for ore. That wasn't very successful. So there was this culmination of things, including perhaps the conflict with the Mormons and the U.S. government. That's when the Utah War started as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and Brigham Young called them all back and quite literally abandoned the fort that they built in only 2 years.
And how long did it set before somebody else came?
It wasn't very long that it sat abandoned. There were a couple of guys who came and thought, well, we can make this a way station. This is by water. People are traveling through here. And it changed hands many times, but it didn't take long for people to realize that it was a place worth preserving. In fact, the most prominent person that next came was a person called O.D. Gass. And he came in the 1860s and decided to create a ranch here. He was the first one to repurpose the bricks into homes and do other things right here on the property. And then after that, O.D. Gass defaulted on a loan to somebody named the Stewarts. The Stewarts came, and they came from Pioche to live here and made this a ranch for 20 years. And that took them into the 1900s. And then the Las Vegas Railroad bought it, and they auctioned off the land to become the city of Las Vegas. We often call this the birthplace of Las Vegas.
It is the oldest standing building.
Yeah, it is the oldest standing structure in Nevada.
Wow.
There were older structures in Nevada, but they've dilapidated or burned or been destructed somehow. But this one is the one still standing. Original fort walls are still out there standing.
How does Helen Jane Weiser Stewart play into this whole?
Huge. I am actually shocked it's not called Helen Jane Stewart State Park, and the old Las Vegas Mormon Fort. She's so significant, you can't understate her relevance to the city of Las Vegas. She came along, and this amazes me. She and her husband came here, and at the time they might have had 3 or 4 children. And not long after they got here, Archibald went over to a nearby ranch, Kyle Ranch. Think of this in 80s. There was the Stewart Ranch in the middle, which is where we're standing now, and maybe 5 other people living in the valley outside of the Southern Paiute. A conflict happened while Helen was here and Archie was gone. When he came back, he wanted to resolve that conflict. So he went to the Kyle Ranch to take it up with the folks there, and unfortunately was shot in a gunfight. So here's Helen with 4 children by herself on a ranch that's hundreds of acres. And she persevered. She was pregnant with the 5th child when this happened. She buried Archie in a family cemetery that's not far from here. And this was, like I said, in the first couple of years she was here. And she stayed for decades. She became the first postmaster here. She was on the Board of Education. She was so relevant to Las Vegas history. It's hard to understate her, like I said. And she's the one who decided, after this had happened, to buy up more land and get more water rights. And she had this foresight that we can't even imagine. And when she did that, and the railroad decided Las Vegas was the place they wanted to be, they wanted all of that. And she sold that to them. And not long after that, they auctioned it off to become the city of Las Vegas. Had she not done that, we might see Las Vegas differently than we do today.
Why do you think that people overlook her so much? I mean, from the story you just told, we should have a lot of roads named after her.
Right.
Parks.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Why would she have been overlooked? I just think history is a hard sell. And it could be because she was a woman. But she tried very hard to establish clubs and maintain the history here. And the Mesquite Club was part of her doing things like that. So she's very relevant. Why she was overlooked or why it's different, I'm not sure. I can't say, really.
I can't imagine what it was like. I mean, if you just take gender out of it, I mean, living out in the middle of nowhere with very limited supplies.
And
That's-
5 children,
And
right?
then you have 5 children.
She was a really good partner with the Paiute. They helped her considerably. She had a very good relationship with them. She also had her father who stepped in and helped her, and brothers and friends. The other ranch owners helped her too. There's evidence that there's a direct relation between here and Spring Mountain Ranch out by Red Rock Canyon. There is evidence of her relation with the Kyle Ranch, which is not far from here, and all the other ranches. They all knew each other. So it was a community for the most part, outside of what happened to Archie at Kyle Ranch.
Did the railroad come through this part of town and then it got taken up, or where did it go?
The railroad goes through near downtown Las Vegas, Fremont Street, where the Union Plaza is. That's where they established, and it still is there. I can hear the railroad from here when it choo-choos by, right by the Paiute colony. The railroad is still here. It was and is a relevant part of transportation of goods and people.
Thanks for watching Untitled Interview. If you liked the conversation you just watched, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're interested, there's lots more just like that right here.